Right, this is the video for skills test number 2. So let's see. Skills test number 1 was the data wrangling in pandas, where you create the Excel files to do the visualizations in R. I've updated the code and the data, the input files. So this is the updated R code, and I've added the data for visualization 2 and 5, which I hadn't before because these were hard to create in skills test number 1. But I haven't added the extra 5 files for the different room types. So I have the data for Club Deluxe, but you'll have to create the Excel files for the other 5 room types in task 1. So you download these, all of these files into a single folder, and so I have all these here. I don't know what's going to be trouble. Let's close this. Right, so you download all those files to a single folder. We'll be using R, so you don't have to open up Jupyter Notebook. I've already got, let me see, copies of the graphs in here. Let me delete these. So I've got the 6 data files and the code. So I can just click directly on this, and it'll open up RStudio. Here's the in a coffee shop, so you might have some interesting background noise. Okay, so here's the code. I have some references if you're going to use R to make plot visualizations in the future. These are some useful web pages. So I'm gonna start by getting the working directory. I'll run this, and you just want to verify that this is the folder containing your code and your data. And so skills test test 2, skills test test 2. If this is not the same folder, if you're not in the same directory, you need to use this. You need to hashtag this and put in your directory where the data actually is, and then run this, and then run get working directory again, and it should change it. But mine is, oops, sorry, correct. So I'm not going to do that. Okay, and then you'll need library ggplot2 and readxl. If you run these, if you've already installed them, then you can just run them. It gives me some warning messages because the version is not maybe totally updated, but they still installed them. So if you're getting error message here, it's because you didn't install these packages yet, and then you need to go up here and install the packages. But after you do that, hashtag them, because you don't want to do this every time. You only want to do it one time in order to install them. So I've installed these libraries. Now I'm going to go down and import the data. Okay, so first I'm going to read in v1, which is, again, that file is right here, v1. So I'll use the readxl function. Okay, it read it in. Now, if my cursor is waiting for the next line, I want to read v1, and that'll just output v1. And you can notice it has month, room type, and total percent. DBL here is a double. That's R's version of a decimal or a float. Room type is character and month is double. I want these to be, I don't want these to be numbers or strings. I want them to be factors. So I want R to treat them as categorical variables. So the way I'm going to do that is by grabbing the column month. So the way you do that is specify the data frame, which is D1, $, the column name, which is month. And then I want to convert that to a factor. And then I want to save this over the original column. And I'm going to do that with month and room type. So I run this, I do that twice. And now if I run D1 again, you can see total percent is still a decimal, it's double, but room type and month are now factors. And, you can see this more clearly if I just output the month. Here you can see it outputs the month column, right? But here at the bottom it says it specifies the levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. So here, when it says levels like this, it's treating each of these as a categorical. It's treating month as a categorical variable, not a number, not an integer. And with room type, it'll do the same thing. So here it's outputting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's outputting the room type column. But the important thing here at the bottom, it has 6 levels: Club Deluxe, King, Room, Executive Suite. Right. So this factor has 6 levels, and you can also, I think you can see what those levels are if you're on this. So the levels of this factor are Club Deluxe, Executive Suite, King Suite. So I'm just showing you that if you run these lines here, they convert whatever data type this was, whether it's an integer or a double or a character, it's converting it to a categorical variable, which is useful when you're doing visualization. So R will treat these room type like a grouping variable, a variable to group on, or to it'll treat it like a data series rather than like a number. Okay, so I'm going to do this for all of my data frames. So I'm reading in B2. I'm going to turn month and revenue type into factors. So here's the data frame for that. It's only showing me the top 10 rows, but you can see there are 36 rows and 3 columns. So month, revenue type, and percent. Read in number 3. Month, revenue type, and percent. These are factors now. That's it. I'm doing this very quickly, but you have to, if you're reading in a new data frame, you have to know, double check when you first read it in what are the data types of the columns, and do you need to change those? So, so you'll need to do that for the other 5 rooms. Total percent. Here I want to turn this to a factor. So now that's a factor. Okay, room 5. Here I have revenue type and percent. I have the variable revenue type because in Python, when I created this data set, I melted bar percent, food percent, room percent, total percent into a single column called revenue type, right? And then these are the values in that column. So that's why I have this factor 5. Okay, and now it's a factor. These are going to be, I'm going to use these for my bar plots. And then lastly for number 6, again, I've got character double. I want factor and factor for those 2. So I'm going to turn room type and revenue type into factors like this. Okay, so I've imported all my data, I've formatted my columns. Now I'm ready to actually do the visualization. So the first visualization was total percentages by month and room type. So here I've got 72 rows. In January, I have all 6 rooms and their total percent. Pardon me. So I'm going to start creating a line plot. Here, I'm going to use for all of these graphs, I'm going to use the ggplot function. I have to specify the data for the plot, which is going to be A1. And then here, this is how I choose variables. So I have an X variable, a Y variable, and I'll have maybe a grouping variable. So here the X, I want month to be on the X-axis and total percent to be on the Y-axis, and then I want to group them by room type. So group is room type, and that's my core graph. And then what kind of graph? I want it to be a line graph. I want to include points on that line graph, so geometric line, geometric point. I want to label the X and Y axes, month and percent, and then this is the title of the graph. So this is like a bare bones, just a very basic line graph. So when I run this, it's not going to output it because I created the graph and then I saved it to this variable P. So now if you actually want to see the graph, you should run P. Okay, and that'll visualize it. Okay. I want to change the theme, which is this kind of background gray grid. So I can do that by adding theme minimal. So I'm just going to rerun everything, but I'm adding this theme minimal option. I'll rerun that. Okay, so it kept the grid, but it got rid of that gray background. Now I want to color the lines by the series, by the room type. So here, again, everything is the same except here in geometric line. Before there was no parameter here. Oops, sorry. Line type was room type. Sorry, I changed the theme. Yeah, you want to change the line. I want the lines to be different. So first, I'm going to use this in geometric line. I'm going to use the option to vary the line according to the room type variable. I don't need to specify the data frame because I've already indicated that all of the variables in this graph are going to be using coming from V1. So I changed the line type, let the line type vary by room type. Oops, that's the old one. Okay. All right, there we go. So now there's a legend with the different line types, but that's fine if you're going to publish in black or white, but still that's pretty messy with 6 categories. So let's do it. Instead of line type, we'll use color. Everything else is staying the same. Okay, so it changed the lines, but it didn't change the and it added this nice legend with the colors, but it didn't change the points in the line. So if you want to do that, you need to add that same parameter to the points as well as the line. So color equals room type, color equals room type. Do that again. Okay. Let's say, okay, so let's say you want to change this, mess with this legend a little bit. Say like, right now room type is literally the name of the variable, right? Room type. But let's say you want to like change the title of this legend to make it more spelling correct or add that space. So you can create a variable called legend title and type it out in English in a string. You can also make a list of legend labels. So this is the list of legend labels. It's already accurate here. You create a list in R by writing C and a So in Python, it would be like a square bracket, right? But in Python, it's just, sorry, in R, it's a C with a parenthesis, and then you list, everything, and then you end with a parenthesis. So I'm just creating a legend title. You can see it's just a single variable, a single string, and legend labels is a list. It's just a list containing the names of the rooms. So then if you want to change the legend labels or title, keep everything the same except here for scale, color, discrete. Here the name. This is used with discrete is used when you have categorical groups and you want to, and you're indicating them by color, right? Which was what we're doing here. So here we say the name is legend title and the labels are legend labels and everything else is the same. And now you can see room type has been replaced. So that's just a little formatting. I'm mostly doing that to introduce these functions. So if you're using there are different combinations. So there could be scale color continuous or scale line continuous or scale line discrete. It just depends on the format of your graph. Lastly, I want to add a 90% line because remember our criteria for acceptable revenue is if the percentage is 90% of the plan or higher. So I want to add in a red line here at the 90% mark so we can easily determine which revenue, which monthly total percentages are above 90. So this part's the same. And all I'm doing here is adding a horizontal line. So geometric H line is for horizontal line. The y-intercept of that line will be 0.9. The line type will be dashed and the color will be red. So you can play with that function if you're interested. Okay, so there's the graph and it's got that nice red line there to indicate the 90% mark. Now, let's say you want to change something about that line. You want to change the texture, right, or the color. How would you alter this line, this function? So you would look at this function, geometric H line, and if you want to know more about that function, you can, down here, you can put a question mark and then type in the name of the function, like this, geometric H line. And if you do that, then R will give you a reference guide for that function. And so here's geometric AB line, geometric V line, geometric H line. Right? So you have the y-intercept variable. You can remove missing values. You can show the legend or not. And you can look at the arguments here. So the arguments include like x-intercept, y-intercept. In terms of aesthetics, these are drawn this. So you can, the aesthetics include things like the color or line type. So if you, here, you can change, this is a complicated example. Yeah, you could use the color variable or the line type variable. You could change the size of the line, like make it thicker or thinner. Right? So if you, and what are your options for line type? You might have to Google this, but anyways, this is kind of how you start to explore yeah, so learn more about these settings and aesthetics in Vignette ggplot2 specs. So, you know, if you're interested in this, you could look at the ggplot2 specs. I don't know what this is going to do. Okay, so this will tell you about like color and fill. Here's like line types. 0 is a blank, solid, dashed, dotted. So you can either use these words here, like I typed in the word dashed, or you could use a number like number 1, number 2, number 3 for dotted, dot dash, long dash, 2 dash, etc. Right? So here's some formatting things. So anyways, this is just how you start exploring. Like you can also explore just by Googling, you know, and I think that's why I included a lot of these like links up here if you want to, you know, format your line plots or your bar plots, for example. All right, so let's keep moving with number 1. So I like this final version, and I want to save that. So we'll go with this one. We'll use the function ggsave. This will be the name of the file. We can just designate it's a PNG file. What are we going to plot? We're going to plot our most recent version of P. We can specify the height and the width in millimeters, and the DPI, the resolution at 500. Again, if you want to know more about that, you can look at this link here, dimension and resolution of image files, to kind of play around with that if you need to format them for a publication or something. Okay, so all right, so I run that. Now look, I haven't run it yet. So notice here in task 2, I don't have any PNG files yet. But after I run this, okay, it ran it. You can tell it moved on to the next cursor, and here now I have the PNG file v1, and it should be exactly what we saw in R. Okay. So if you don't like the formatting, maybe the title needs to be bigger, the graph needs to be smaller, whatever, you can, you know, all those things you can play with in the formatting, both when you save it, the file, and also when you create the graph. So, okay, that's the first one. I'm going to move through the second and all the other ones a little bit faster. I'm not changing that much here. Percentages by month and revenue type. This is almost exactly the same as B1. But instead of room type, now I have revenue type. These are factors, so it's ready to go. Notice the big change here, the only change here is I'm changing the data from B1 to B2. The month, the X variable and the Y variable are still month and percent, but the group here is changed now. I don't have room type, it's revenue type. So this group needs to be a single variable where the levels of that variable are, you know, here in the, I mean, it has to be a single variable, which is a factor. So if you look at revenue type, these are all the values of revenue type, and down here you've got 3 levels: bar, root, and room. So and then the geometric line is going to be by revenue type. The points are going to be by revenue type, and everything else is the same as V1. Right. I'm going to change the legend. Okay, so this is great. You've got January through December, the percent, month percentage by revenue type, bar, food, and room over here, and maybe I want to change the title, or the legend title, to put that space between revenue and type. So I create the variable legend title. So I'll update the legend title here. I'm not changing the column names; those are fine. The legend values, bar, food, and room are fine. But I'm also going to add in the 90% red line here. And then everything else is the same. So I'll run that. Okay, so monthly percentage by revenue type. Remember, these are aggregated over the rooms, right? So overall, across all 6 rooms, you can tell that the room plan exceeded the room actuals exceeded the plan, you know, above 90%, except for, you know, maybe November and December. So there's some drop off here. The bar dropped off but picked up, and then dropped off, picked up, dropped off, and the food is the huge problem here, right? So I'm going to save this again, exactly the same call, just put in v2 png, and I'm plotting p, my most recent version of p, which is this. So if I do that, now I should have v2 is updating here. And here we go. Okay, so let's do the same thing. We're going to do the bar food room percentages by month for each room. So the next one will be the exact same as this graph, except it won't be by revenue type aggregated. It'll be for a specific room. Right? So now we're kind of digging into the data analysis. We know that food is the problem, but for which room type? Is it that for all room types or just one room type? So these are the different rooms. I'm just going to do it for Club Deluxe King Room, and you're going to do it for the other 5. So here's the month revenue type percent. Same data structure as this, except these percentages are only for the Club Deluxe King Room. I'm going to put in room name here as the Club Deluxe King Room. I'm doing this because you'll see in a second, I want to use this variable in the title of the graph to change the title of the graph. So there's the room name. So data here, I'm creating a new variable. I'm creating a new data frame called dat, which is the v31. And then I'm going to, let's see. These are already factors, month and revenue type are factors, so actually I don't need these, but if you run them again, it doesn't matter. And then why am I doing this? I'm doing this to make it easy for you to copy and paste. So you don't have to copy and paste this, right? So all you have to do, once you have v32, v33, v34, v35, all you have to do is change 2 things. You just have to change the room name, so that'll change the title of the graph, and you just change that from v31 to v32, right? And once you do that, then all of these graphs they're not using v31, they're using dat, so you don't have to change anything, right? And even here in the title, monthly percentages by revenue type room name, right? The room name is this variable here. So as long as you use a variable, you only have to change the room name of the variable once, and then all of the plots that we make from here below include dat and the room name. So, you know, it'll just input whatever you put up here, right? So that way you only have to modify these 2 variables, room name and dat, for each of these graphs, and then just run these graphs, you know, all the way down. Output them. And even in the, I think even in the, oh here, GG save, I can even, you'll have to change the name of the file. I could have used room name variable here, but I didn't. So you'll have to manually change this as well for each room type. So, okay, so let's run it. So it's monthly percentages by revenue type for the Club Deluxe King Room, right? The revenue type is bar, food room, total. And you can see for the Deluxe, Club Deluxe King Room, the food is a huge problem, right? But everything else, I didn't put in the 90% line. Let me see. So I'm gonna change up the legend titles. Clean that up. I'm gonna add that 90% threshold. So you can see the bar and the total, the bar and the total, like the bar dropped a little bit, but it's by far the food is the issue. Okay, and then I'm gonna save this. So there's the v3 Club Deluxe PNG file. There we go. So moving along. total and your percentages by room type. Now we're switching from a line graph to a bar plot. So we want to look at annual percentages by room type. So here's the data for that. Right? It's going to be a simple bar plot where you just have 6 bars, and here's the percent on the y-axis. This is a factor, that's a decimal. So how do you change the function? How do you change the graph function from a line plot to a bar plot? So here, remember, it was a geometric line and geometric point. For a bar plot, it's just geometric bar. So we'll still use the first line will still be the same. We have the data frame is v4. The x-axis is going to be room type, right? This categorical variable. The y-axis will be the percent. And then the geometric bar, the statistic for the y-axis is going to be identity. So R lets you, suppose you had messier data and we hadn't aggregated your percents by room type. R would let you use some other variable for the statistic. I prefer to do all of my formatting in Python and output the data frame as an Excel file in exactly the format I want it for the graph, so I don't have to do anything fancy in R. I don't like doing data transformations in R. It's much easier to do it in Pandas. So in that case, you don't have to aggregate or anything. Like, you just are going to use these data exactly as they are. So in that case, the statistic is identity. It's the data exactly as they are. And then the X label is the room type, the y-axis percent, and here's my title. Okay, so now I have a bar plot. You can see there's some formatting issues at the bottom here. You can see the bars are pretty ugly. So let's change the bar colors and borders a little bit. To do that, you still need, inside of geometric bar, you just add in color and fill. So color is going to be the boundary of the color of the boundary of the bar, and fill is going to be the inside color. So I've just picked KIMEP appropriate colors. I'm going to fill it with purple and use the boundary, make the boundary gold. So this is, fancier than I would use for a. You can see that there's a gold boundary there. You can change these. You can make the boundaries thicker, thinner, whatever. I also, another thing I want to do is rotate these axis labels. Like maybe now they're 0 degrees. I want to rotate them like 45 degrees or something. So here I can do scale X discrete. All right, so again, this is one of those functions. Here, scale X, see X-axis, and the X-axis is categorical, so that's why you use discrete. If it was continuous, it would be scale X continuous, I think. So we want to change something about the X-axis, specifically the guide axis, and we want the angle to be 60 degrees. So let's just try that. So that does that. I mean, is that better? I guess they're not running into each other. So, okay, and then if I want to edit the axis labels, right now you can see these look pretty good. If these labels were messy, for example, if they were like not separated or whatnot, you could, oh yeah, why don't I just simplify them? So here I've got Club Deluxe King Room. Maybe I can just simplify that to Club Deluxe King. I can change this to executive. I can change this to, I can drop the room or the suite, right? So here I want to create a list for my X-axis labels in order, right? So Club Deluxe King, Executive King, 1-bedroom club, 1-bedroom suite, and Superior King. So I'll create this list. It's just a list. So if I run it, you can just see it's just these 6 variables. And then here, back in this X discrete, function where I can modify the x-axis. I still want to rotate them 60 degrees, but I want to replace the labels with my list. Sorry, x-axis labels. So we'll run that. Okay, now they're shortened, so it kind of made them shorter and compressed it. You can play around with this if you want. Change the angle a little bit if you like. You can also resize the axis labels. So here you can add a line called theme. Theme is what you do to change any of the kind of formatting, like font or size of things. So if I want to change the axis text X, so I want to change the text on the x-axis, element text size. So I'm going to scale it to 50%. So this is a more kind of advanced formatting thing. I didn't know about this either. I just had to Google it. So I don't have these on the top of my mind. But if you want to do anything to the graph, you can always just Google. Right? So I'll run that. Made them a little bit smaller. Okay, what if I want to flip the coordinate axes? So I've got a bar graph, a vertical bar graph. What do I want to change it to a horizontal bar graph? So here you could do, in that case, you just do everything first, and at the very end you flip the coordinates. You can do coordinate flip, and that will change your horizontal bar graph to a vertical, or sorry, vertical bar graph to a horizontal one. And then let's add the 90% threshold. So, quick question. Do we add the threshold as a vertical line or as a horizontal line? So the answer is you add it as a horizontal line. Right? You're going to add it as a horizontal line to the original graph here before you do the coordinate flip. So here I'm adding the geometric horizontal line at 90%, dashed red, and then I'm going to do the coordinate flip so that horizontal line will turn into a vertical line along with everything else. So here's that, right? And there's the red line. So if you want that red line to come out to the front, I think you just change the order, right? So this, now you'll put the bars first and you'll put the line afterward. And I think that would put the red line in front of the bars. Yeah. So if you want this red line in front of the bars, you move it down lower in the commands. So these things are processed in order, obviously, right, with the coordinate flip too. But if you want the red line behind the bars, then you create the red line before you do the bars, before you paint the bars. So there, now it's behind. And I'll go with that graph, that version of the graph. So I'll just call this V4, plot P. I played with the height and width a little bit. Let's see how it works out. So that's 2, V4. All right, there it is. It's a little big in your face. I might drop the gold borders. I might tone it, make it smaller. I don't know. But anyways, there it is. Okay, last two are also, so this one's a bar graph. V5 is a bar graph, bar plot, but it's the same idea as this one. But I'm going to ask you to adapt the code from V4. The only difference is that instead of annual total percentages by room type, now you're going to have it by revenue type. So you'll have like bar, room, food, and maybe total. Let's see, what does V5 have total? Yeah, total. So you'll have like a bar, one for food, one for room, one for total. You'll just adapt your code from V4. Okay, I'll leave that one up to you. Lastly, I think we're going back to, this is also a bar plot, but it's with groups. So here, V6, it's a bar plot, but now I want to combine, I want two variables on the x-axis. I want the room type and the revenue type. I've got room type, revenue type, and percent. And these are again annual percentage, annual total percentages. So I've got the legend title. I want revenue type. Let's see. So you have to decide here. Do you want like my data is V6. Do you want your graph to have? You're having two variables on the x-axis. Do you want room types, like the 6 room types, and then the 3 revenue types inside of each, or do you want 3 revenue types with 6 room types inside of them? I want the 6 room types on the outer one, and then inside of each room type I want the revenue types. So that's why here my x variable will be room type, y variable will be percent, and then here I don't use group. I'm not grouping. It's not a series. I'm filling. For the bar plot, I'll use fill. This is how you have that second variable inside of the x-axis, right, inside of those categories. So I'll fill with revenue type. I'm still going to use geometric bar identity. And for position, I'm going to dodge. So this is because within room type, within each room, I would have 4 bars, right? Bar, food, total. I don't want those to be on top of each other. I want them to be like sideways. So that's how I use this dodge feature. And then minimal theme, X label, Y label. I have a legend here for the fill, right, which is revenue type. It's categorically so it's discrete, and the name of that will be this legend title, revenue type, and here are the labels. So I have that here. I also have scale X discrete because I want to change the x-axis is going to have these room names at an angle, and I can abbreviate it with my x-axis labels. I'm going to scale them to about 80%. So I'm doing a lot of formatting just even in this one graph. Let me see here, so make sure these are correct. Okay, so I've got room type, I've got the 6 rooms. Each room has 4 bars, bar, food, and room. Probably I could have dropped that total. I'm not going to do that here, but I could have either done that. I could have done that in Python, just drop the total and just leave bar, food, and room. Be probably better. But one thing I will show you is how to change the color scheme. So if you go up here to color palettes and you look at this link here, there are all kinds of color palettes you can choose. So I'm going to choose, I'll just show you some examples. So here's set 3, it's a color palette choice. You just create a variable called palette choice. And then here, scale fill. Why is it fill? Because again, it's the variable revenue type, which is the nested categories. But brewer is what you use for changing colors. So scale fill brewer is going to change the column colors within the second variable. And the palette is going to be whatever I set it here, set 3. And then still I have the legend title and legend labels, or whatever I set them to be up here. Revenue type bar, 2 up total. So I'll run this. Everything else is the same. I'm just changing the palette. And this is set 3. So if you like that, you can leave it. Here's another one, blue, purple, I think. I don't know. Yeah. So that one's kind of cool. Again, bar, food, room, and total. You can see here, total revenue is total percent and Club Deluxe King. The total food revenue was below 90%. King as well, right? The King, everything was below 90%. The food in the one-bedroom club was also a problem, and the one-bedroom suite. So food here is pretty much a problem in all of them except for executive and superior. Right? Bar was lower for these two, and very low for this one, but food was the main issue. So, okay, I'm going to add that 90% threshold line here, that horizontal line, red dashed line. All right, and I'm going to go with this graph. So this is annual room, bar, and food percentages by room type. I'll save this to V6 PNG. File, and there it is, V6. So task 2 is mostly just running the code straight through. You don't have to adapt it that much, except for that V3 and V5. But let me know if you have any trouble with it, and move on to task 3.